Hey everybody, welcome. Happy Friday. The weekend is finally upon us, and we're kicking off the weekend with a new series. We're creating a Parchment world map. A map not too dissimilar from the one you see before you, so if you like this map, definitely stick around, and we'll show you how to create it in this new series. Of course, you can also clone and edit this map for personal use if you'd like. I've provided that link in the chat. If you're watching on YouTube, I'll provide that in the video description. Hey, Kayfae. Hey, how you doing? Good. Love to see some familiar faces. We're making a Parchment world map. I'm excited about this. So we're going to go ahead and start with the syllabus. That means what we're going to be covering today. Hey, Adam. How you doing? Good to see you. So I'm going to start by just covering the syllabus. And I do want to mention that this is your typical 40 by 30 landscape aspect ratio map. It's in the Parchment world style. And that's about it. So I didn't do a whole lot here with this because you didn't see me go through the new maps creation. So I just wanted to tell you what the dimensions are. Just pretty your standard map. You can also use other ones like portrait and square. It's just up to you, but I'm going to stick with your standard 40 by 30 for grid. For the syllabus, this is what we're going to be covering in today's stream. We're going to do part one. We're going to be doing the creation story lore or the creation myth. Now, the creation myth doesn't have to necessarily be tied in with the actual rules that you do to create the landmasses, but that can certainly help, and that's a decision that you have to make. After we've kind of quickly gone over the creation myth, we'll go over the rules. That means the rules that are going to be governing how to create landmasses. This is generally a stickler for a lot of map creators. They just have a hard time figuring out how to make the shapes of the landmasses, and so creating a very simple system with rules is a way to create the landmasses. And what's beautiful about rules with a fantasy map is that you can break those rules, so not everything has to be clear cut. So it's always nice to kind of break the rules here and there as you see fit, considering it's a fantasy world, right? And then finally, we're going to create the landmasses themselves, and I'll show you how to put together that with the mask tool and then maybe some mask effects. And I think that should cover the first episode because there's a lot to cover. Just that stuff alone can be a lot. So let's go ahead and turn that off. We'll start with the lore first, the creation lore, and I've go ahead and just put it right into the map details. So in the beginning, there was only the one flame, a boundless living fire that burned with purpose, but no shape. From this fire came Vareth, the shaper, the elder god, who forged the first hammer from a shard of his own being. With each strike, Vareth splintered the one flame into sparks that became land, sea, and sky. The largest of these sparks became the youngling gods. The first three to awaken were Sol-Un, Mira, and Drenar. Each claimed a realm. Sol-Un took the heights and carved the sun and stars. Mira took the deep and whispered life into the oceans and forests. And Drenar, jealous and silent, hollowed the earth and filled it with stone, shadow, and spirits. But the world remained unstable, still, too close to the raw chaos of the flame. So Varus struck one final blow and shattered his hammer. From its pieces came time, death, and memory, fixing the world in place. Now the gods rule their domain, the lands drift on the cooled edges of the flame, and mortals carry embers of that first fire in their hearts, shaping, destroying, and dreaming, just as the Shaper once did. So there's my myth or creation myth. It doesn't really have to explain how the land masses were shaped, but it is nice to throw it in there. So that's really up to you and the decision that you want to make. That's just to kind of get us started. So the second part is to create a system in which you make land masses. And there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of go about. We can kind of go about doing the land masses. There's the different systems, like there's plate tectonics. Maybe there was a catastrophe where a asteroid hit the planet, and then land, as it struck the oceans, it pushed land outward. It could be shattered islands, whatever it might be. If you create some kind of rules or governing system, it becomes easier to shape the land masses. And the quickest and the easiest one that I know of is plate tectonics. And it's not a very complex system, and you don't have to know much about plate tectonics to do this. Really, there's a simple method that you can go through to put on your land masses. So what I'll first do is just prep the canvas for that landmass. And what I'll first do is turn on the grid. You notice that it's 40 by 30. And the grid is useful because I want to create the plates that exist on the planet. And the great place to start with the plates is the two sides, because remember, we're talking about a globe. The plate on the left and the plate on the right are going to be one single plate, just like the plate at the top and the plate at the bottom are going to be one whole plate. So we'll start with there first, and we want to make sure that the two plates on the left and the right side connect at the same place, and that is where the grid becomes useful. You can make sure that when you're putting down those two plates, you're not going to accidentally not have them connect. So what I'll do first is I'll use a path or a line of my choice, and I'll start with just the regular freehand draw, and I'll go in and start making a shape. Now, the rule that I kind of set for myself is I never have straight lines like this. I'll never do straight lines. I'm always going to have a little bit of jitter when I'm putting it together. So you notice that my hand shakes a little bit, and when you're doing a mouse, that shake is okay. My suggestion is not to go too far off from the center or too close to the center. Go off a little bit this way, and then have it connect where you want to on that side. Now you notice that I made sure that they're on these lines, so that would simply translate that I want to have these connect on that other side, because this is the one side of the plate. So I'll go over here and then create the next one. And they don't have to be a jigsaw puzzle shape the same on the other side. You can make it different shapes because they would be different shapes. So I'll go in like this, create the shape here, and just make sure that I connect at that 2 grid point right there. So now these are one plate. These are one whole complete plate. And you can tell that by simply taking this one right here. I'm going to move it over to here, take this plate over to here. And as you can see, I've got a whole connected plate there. So we're going to go ahead and create the next plate, which is going to be at the top and the bottom. And this is not too complex. We can go in right here. We'll scale out so we can see it. And I'm going to start here and then make the next plate. So I go here, wherever I want to go, here, and then I'll connect it right here, right that. So there's the top half of the plate. There's also another plate at the bottom. Remember, this is the same plate. So I'll do it again right here like this. And what you're basically creating is like a little squiggly frame. And it's good to start out with the frame first, because then you can go ahead and start filling it in with major and minor plates, because there are 2 types of plates, at least with the Earth logic that we know of, right? There's a minor plate and a major plate. So a major plate is a big, big, big plate, and a minor plate is a small plate. Now, when I'm deciding how many plates to do, this all depends on how intricate you want your landmass shapes to be. So when I'm putting this down, we're going to end up using the outlines of all the plates and the lines to create the landmasses. So the way to make those unique shapes is to not start with having all the major plates be close to each other. Have the major plates be separated from each other and then separated by minor plates. This will allow for more unique shapes when you're creating your landmasses. So we have 2 plates made already, the left and the right, and the top and the bottom. Those are 2 whole plates. So what I generally end up doing is I'll go ahead and pick anywhere that I want and just create one major plate. It doesn't really matter where you start or where you put it. So I'll have one major plate. So now I have 3 major plates. So now I might want to go in and create some minor plates around this major plate. So I'll go in here like this. Oh, I don't like the way that was set. Let's go like this. I'll create one minor plate here. And then what I'll do is I'll go ahead and start placing minor plates around the major plate for a specific reason, because I want to have those more unique land shapes. So I'll go in here, and because I already made a small one right here, I won't do that. I'll put a smaller one right here instead. And it doesn't really matter the shape. The rule to follow is just not to do these straight lines, right? It's okay to have a little bit of jitter. And don't forget, when we finish with this to go to end the landmasses and stuff, we're going to delete this. So don't worry about making them perfect. It's technically just a guide for you to use when you're making your shapes. So it's okay if you kind of deviate from them a little bit. So I've made 2 minor plates and we have 3 major plates. Let's continue making the other plates. So let's have another one right here. Connect right here. So now I have another kind of an in-between plate. Technically it would be minor, but we can make it bigger if we want. Let's make a smaller plate then. Right here, like this. Okay, let's make an even smaller plate. Right here, nice small plate. And then I see some room here. Why don't we make a larger plate right here like this? Okay, so now we're slowly starting to put together the plates. Now that I've made a large one, let's make another smaller one, maybe like right here. That looks good. And then we'll make a larger plate like this. And then let's go ahead and create a couple smaller plates. One small one right here like this, a tiny one. And then we can create a larger plate right here like this. And then we'll go ahead and create a couple more plates. Let's do some smaller ones. Go in, get your shape. I don't really like the way that I connected that. Let's put the connection right here instead. And we'll go this way. That will make a more interesting shape. And I think we can make one more. Let's put one more shape right here. And let's make it an interesting U shape right here. Now, I think this is enough plates for right here. We have a nice combination of larger major plates and minor plates. Now, once you've connected those plates and you've put them together, then you can go ahead and group the whole thing and just call it your plates. You're going to be using this as a guide. I no longer need the grid anymore, so I'll just turn that off. I'm going to make sure my plates are down a couple layers so that way I can paint on top of it. And I'm going to choose another path. I'm going to choose a black color. And now I can start making my landmass shape. So as you can see all these different plates, and you can already see some landmass shapes kind of coming together. So what the objective is to just first decide how many continents that you want to have. Once you figured out how many you want, then you have to decide their varying sizes. And I generally try to follow some kind of logic when doing this, just to show contrast. I generally won't have, like, let's say I have 3 continents. They're not going to all be the same size. For contrast's sake, I'm going to have maybe a very large continent, a medium-sized continent, and maybe a couple smaller continents. It's the same kind of logic that I used when I made the plates. I had a smaller number of major plates, but a much larger or a larger number of minor plates. You see the contrast there? So I'm going to go ahead and use that same logic. I'll create one large landmass first, and then I'll create maybe a medium-sized one and then some smaller ones. So it's just to create the contrast, because what makes a large landmass look big? When you compare it to either no other landmasses around it or smaller ones for the contrast. So remember that rule. So now I'm going to take this black path and I'm just going to create the landmasses that I want. And you don't even have to create like the Arctic regions. Before, in the first series we did with the fantasy world style, I kind of made these 2 continents being up at the top and being at the bottom. And I'm going to skip that this time. I'm not going to have an Arctic landmass at the top and one at the bottom. I think it's just going to be kind of nice not to have those frigid zones. We're going to depart a little bit from our previous stuff. So I'll go ahead now and create another landmass. So let's see here. What I'll do is, I just kind of a larger one. So let's make a medium-sized one right here like this. I kind of like this shape right here. This looks good. So we'll go ahead and create one right here like this. There's another landmass shape. And then I can go ahead and create a couple more as well. Like maybe we can use this whole plate right here for another medium-sized one. And then I can create another one like right here. And I think that is about the right amount of shapes that I want. I can put in smaller ones, and you don't always have to use the lines as a guide either. You can depart from them. That's the beauty of a fantasy map, right? So if I want to, I can go in and create like another landmass just right here, because it just feels like it fills in the shape better. They're kind of equidistant from each other, so I don't really want to do that too much. And then maybe I want to create another one right about here. Another shape right here. You don't have to encompass. So someone asked a really good question. Jonathan Frost asked a great question. Do you want them to cross multiple plates? You totally can. And if you feel that your shapes begin to not go across multiple plates, that's okay. You create more fault lines, right? Because that's the trick. Because it's okay if you start to realize like, because what those red lines on the continent are going to represent is where you're going to put your mountains. And Jonathan picked up on that, and that was smart. And so the way to fix this issue is not complex. You go back into your plates group, and you just go in, and you go where your mountains, you go to where your landmasses are, and you simply add in another plate. That's it. Add in a couple more plates. That's all that you have to do. It's not complex, right? So if you ever feel like you made a little mistake or it's not right, it's okay. You can always go back and change them. That's the beauty of using of the fantasy map thing, right? So I can go in right here, like I want to have another one right here. And then this smaller one, I want to have some kind of mountain range on it. So I'll go ahead and create one right here that kind of goes across and then down right here. And this smaller one too, right here. Let's create another one that maybe goes across like this, and maybe even a smaller one that goes down like that. And the same thing here. I want to create another landmass or another fault line. That's fine. Okay, let's go right here. I'm going to go right here, and I'll put another one right here like that. So I got some smaller plates. Let's just connect this other plate right here. And then let's connect another one right here like this. And now we have enough lines to represent our mountain ranges. And what's here is that you can always change things too. Remember the rule with fantasy and the rules. You can break the rules. Just because there's not red lines on the continent to represent where your plate tectonics, where your mountain ranges are going to come up through subduction, that's okay. It's okay. You can totally cheat and add in a mountain range that's not connected to it. That's all right. Rules are meant to be broken. It's fantasy. Unless your players are actual scientists that study geography and study these kind of plate tectonics and stuff, they're probably not going to be questioning that mountain range that's off to the left there on your continent, okay? So it's okay. Break the rules. Don't worry if you don't follow them all the way through. And this is going to be less stressful for you because you're going to go, wait a minute, I can't put mountains here. There's not plates here, so I can't put them here. Don't worry about that. Give yourself less work, less stress. Just add in the mountains where you feel they're needed, because there's going to be a time when you're working on the landmass and you're going to realize, no, wait a minute, my mountain ranges, there's not enough mountain ranges. It seems so flat in this area. Just add them. So this is really the trick to, I feel, when you're doing the tectonic plates, it's kind of helpful here. So I'll go ahead and remove the tectonic plates, or at least bring the opacity all the way down to 0. And then I can take a look at the shapes that I currently have, and I can decide, okay, I like the arrangement, I like the way that they are, because with the tectonic plates on there, you don't get an idea of what the overall composition is going to look like. Once you've kind of looked at it and you decided that you're kind of happy with that, I'll go ahead and just lock the plate so I don't actually select it. And now I can go in and select these, create group, and we're going to call these landmasses. We're going to create, there we go. So now we have our landmasses. And I'm going to bring the opacity down just a hair, so that, because what I want to do now is I'm going to create the outlines of these landmasses. So I'm going to go over to the mask tool. I'm going to choose edgy brush. I'm going to turn off the enable mask effects, because what I've noticed is that if you don't have a very powerful machine, mask effects can lag a little bit. It's a little labor or memory intensive. So just click that off. I'm also going to turn off the smoothness, and I'm also going to just apply some land real quick to see just how edgy the brush is. Those are some really sharp edges, so I'll go ahead and bring the roughness down just a little bit more. Let's just go ahead and apply it again. Nope, let's go ahead and bring it down even more, all the way down to 3. I think that should be enough. Now remember, don't worry about making the coastlines perfect. The trick here is just to get the landmass shapes in place and set up. So don't worry about perfection yet. And the way that I'll do this is I'll choose a brush size that's fairly decent size, and then I'll just go right in and just follow along the edge. Just like this, not too complex. It's okay if it takes a couple tries, right? You let go. Don't worry if you drift over the edge or you don't get close enough to it. Remember, this is the beginning stage of the landmass. You don't have to worry about making it perfect. So just make sure you just get that in first and do each one. We'll do that one, and then we'll do this one next. And what's nice is that we can also change up the sizes, because we're probably going to end up changing things to be a little bit bigger. It's okay. So I'll go ahead and add this in here. Do each one, putting it together. Perfect. And we're probably going to add more landmasses, like some tiny islands and stuff, because it's always nice to have smaller islands to break up or to create this kind of diffuse the edges of the landmass. So after you've done that, then you'll go over to your paintbrush or your bucket. So you'll notice over here I'm using the edgy brush. Go to that paint bucket, click the first one, second one, click that one, this one, this one, this one. And now your landmasses, oopsie, looks like I missed it. Oh, did it not go in? There we go. So now I have the landmasses put into shape. I can delete these if I want or remove them. That's up to you. I'm just going to go ahead and delete them for now, and you can kind of get an idea of that shape. After this, I'll go ahead and save it. And then after saving, we'll go ahead and continue adding more to it. Because here's the shapes so far, and what we want to do is we want to do some coastline work to make it more interesting. So the way that I go about doing coastlines is there's a couple shapes and things that you can add to make your coastlines more interesting. For instance, you can add things like archipelagos, you can add straits, you can add small islands, you can add horns, which is like a horn-like shape. There's already kind of a horn-like shape right here. You can see right here, this is what we would consider a horn. So these are very helpful shapes. You can also create bays where it kind of goes inward like this, with a little bay inward, and that way you have more contrast to the shape, because the more and more that your shapes kind of create these kind of straight kind of lines like this, that's when you start to realize that the landmass needs a little bit more edge to it. And so what we'll do is we'll fill out more of the shape. So we'll go back here, go to the edgy brush. We're going to use edgy brush. We're going to go with a small size. Don't worry about something massive. I'm going to zoom in so I can see better what I'm doing. And then I can go in, and you can start with, when you want to decide, do I want to use an additive method or a subtractive method? By additive, that means taking the add mode of the mass tool and adding to it or subtracting to it. This is determined really by the proximity to other landmass shapes. So for instance, if I made this shape where the landmass was this close, like this close, then I want to consider using a subtractive method when I'm carving up that land shape, right? But if there's not much, if there's plenty of room between a land shape like this, these two right here, if there's plenty of room between that landmass and the other landmass, then it's okay to use a more additive method, right? So it's about proximity. You don't want to have your landmasses so close together. And there's also continental drift, right? These continents would have drifted from each other. So one way you could show age is the further they're drifted from each other, the older the planet is, the closer the continents are, the younger the planet. Little kind of tip in there if you want to use to show age on your planet, okay? That's up to you. So I'll start with a more additive method for this part right here, because there's the shape, the size, the proximity is not too far away. So I'll start carving it out. What I'll use is kind of a smaller brush size, and I can go ahead here like this and just start kind of carving out some more shapes. Like for instance, maybe I want to add like a little bit more of a horn shape right here. And whenever I'm doing that, I always take a step back to make sure that it's not out of place. Whenever you're zoomed in, you don't have a sense of scale or a sense of proximity. Like how does this look in the larger zoomed out scale, right? So whenever I add a feature, I try to zoom out a little bit to make sure that it doesn't look too out of place. So I think overall that looks okay, but I want to make sure that I kind of connect this more. Let's maybe push this out. And a nice little technique that you can do to make interesting shapes is to create diagonal strokes going like this. So if I go in like this and add in these diagonal strokes, you'll start to see that some shapes start getting formed when I start doing this. So this little diagonal little trick is one way to make a unique shape. So I can go in like this, add in that. And of course, you want to take a step back a little bit. Make sure that it looks okay. I think overall that's all right. Let's take a little step back here and I'll continue that method. Let's go ahead and have it kind of create a little mini horn right here. And then we'll add a little shape here. And you can already see that this diagonal method starts to create some more interesting kind of shapes for you already. So I'll start with an additive method and then we'll do a subtractive method next. Okay, so I want to add in here. I think overall that shape looks okay. Let's add a little bit more jaggedness to this edge right here. There we go. Okay, so those jagged edges are there. That looks good. I'm going to fill in this spot right here. I try not to have little tiny subtracted spaces on the coastlines too much. So then I'll switch over to subtract because I'm overall okay. This will probably be subject to change. That's the way it goes. And I'll bring my brush size way down. And then I can go in and start creating some bays and inlets. And I can even shave off some of the current existing places. So I can go in right here and go with subtract and then create a little island right here. I can do that. I can go in right here and then maybe I want to create like a bay or something. So I want to go in right here. We'll create the mouth first and then I'll create this little bay. I don't want it to be too massive, but this is a fairly large bay right here. So I have a bay there. And then I can also go in and create little jagged little edges here like this. Just go in, subtract a little bit, just to kind of give it some more unique, some larger inlet-like shapes here. So go in here like this. And so you can kind of see that it kind of comes together. I don't want them all to be the same size, so I'll make one bigger than the other. Like this, one going here. Let's put one here like this. There we go. Okay, I don't want to go into too much detail, so we'll start there first. So I think overall, that continent kind of looks okay. So once I've set that in stone, then I can go to that next one over here. I'm just going to stick with the same method that I was using, right? I'll go with the first with the additive method and kind of create those jagged shapes that I want. I'm going to try to make sure that I don't get too close to the other landmass. I can always subtract if need be. Let's go ahead and just have a little part jutting out here like this. We'll go in here. Let's go ahead and add a little shape here. And I'm going to take a step back. Just want to make sure that it's not too far off. Okay, let's go in here. That's too much of a circle or a little bit of an arch there, so I don't want to do too much of that. Go in here. These two kind of fit into each other like this. Let's go ahead and give this shape go up a little bit this way. There we go. Give it a little bit of a curve right here like this. Okay, that looks okay. Let's maybe make this one pop out a little bit. Okay, it looks good. We'll do the same thing here. And let's give this a little bit more character, a little more shape. There we go. Okay, looks okay. A little more ruggedness here. And we're going to do that additive method to all of them. Okay, here we go. Getting that shape together. Let's kind of make this look like maybe these two shapes kind of connected into making a smaller shape. So like this kind of like banana-like shape. So we'll go one here. And then we'll create another little island like right here like this, just to kind of continue this kind of L-like shape that kind of continues like this. There we go. Kind of a massive archipelago, you could say. Okay, let's go ahead and add in a little bit more here. Okay, that looks all right. And then we'll go in here and then we'll do the next shape here. All right. Okay, just a way to kind of create these kind of jigsaw-like shape when you're kind of putting your landmass together. Okay, let's do that. A little too much there. We'll go ahead and kind of make this kind of go out a little bit more. Connect this one. And we can maybe have a little shape that kind of pops up right here. So it kind of connects them with right there. Okay, there we go. Goes in. Okay. Now, I think what I'll do next in here is I'll go ahead and go to the subtract mode, right? And then I'll go in and kind of create my shapes here. So I'll go in right here and subtract a little bit right here to kind of create this interesting kind of shape right here. I'll go in right here and create another one right here just to kind of break it up. And put another one there. And then we'll put a couple here too just to kind of break up this shape. And then in fact, we'll kind of break off some islands here. So I'll break this up kind of like this and then break it off. There we go. Just a small island there. And then once you've done the additive and subtractive kind of stuff, then you can go in and kind of add in islands to kind of break up the shape a little bit. So I can go in here like this, and maybe I just want to go with the smallest brush size. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit so I can kind of see it. And then I'll kind of start at my top and kind of move my way down. So I'll just single click, start placing together these kind of islands. And the way that I do the islands is don't worry about making them perfect. You can change them as you see fit. But we'll just go ahead and make some simple ones just for starters. Some of these might get deleted and removed because they're so small. You might not be able to fit stamps on them. So we might have to make some larger ones. And then we can also delete them as we see fit. But the reason why I add in small islands, these little islands, is because it kind of diffuses the edge. So look at the difference between an edge that has no islands on it and then an edge that does have little islands on it. You can see that it kind of creates this transition between the land masses and the ocean. My edgy brush is set to small for a very specific reason. I'm going to go back with a hard brush without edges and I'll complete it. This is just to kind of give me a general shape because this is subject to change. That's the beauty about this, is that it's not going to be the final shape. We'll end up subtracting and adding things as we go. And the way that I kind of see it is just full steam ahead. I generally go through with the method. I'll start with where I started, and then I go up to the last couple steps, and then I can go back and adjust things as need be. And there won't need to be a whole lot of adjustments, but it's just a way to kind of keep momentum going. I try not to backtrack too much and make adjustments. I'll just follow through with the added subtractive, added the small islands, and then after the small islands, we'll move on to that next step. So we'll go ahead and create those little islands shapes. First, we'll create one here like this. Create some shapes. Again, temporary, they're not going to be permanent. Maybe I want to add some more islands to here. I try to add some single click shapes here to kind of make it look nice, but it kind of breaks up the shape. So let's put one right here, and then we'll break up a little bit by creating some shapes here. One here. Okay, let's go ahead and create another shape right here, kind of going along the edge. One right here. Okay, so we're kind of putting all the shapes together. Let's create some small islands, kind of connecting this all together. Some smaller islands along this edge here. Same thing over here, we'll add some small islands. Yeah, making the edge of brush pretty small. A lot of the maps that I make, I use a kind of a RPG kind of map style where the scale is kind of scaled up a little bit so you can see more. But with this one, I'm actually might bring the scale down a little bit more because I usually always just kind of make this a lot of the similar kind of maps. And so I want to do something different this time and something that you all might more relate to, because some people are like, well, I want a map with the scale being a little bit more quote unquote realistic. So I'm going with that here by just kind of making the landmasses a little bit smaller and stuff. I'm just going to go with a much smaller scale than what I normally do. So we'll go ahead and add in the islands. And I think we might have enough time to actually put the mountains down, which is nice. I wasn't certain if we were going to get through that in enough time. So this is kind of cool that we probably will have time to cover how to do the mountain part. So that's kind of exciting. And these are, again, all temporary. I actually don't even like some of the islands that are on here. Doesn't really look that nice, but we can go back and change it. So let's go ahead and save first. And we'll go ahead and put down we'll start with the mountain range logic and how to put that together. And then we'll probably come back to landmasses in another episode. But for now, I think you guys get a general idea on how to put landmasses together using plate tectonics. You simply just need to make the framing 2 plates, top, bottom, and then you can start making the major and minor plates and kind of build your way from there. So that's usually how I go about doing it. All right, so now that it's saved, we can go ahead and start doing the mountain range. So once you've kind of put all that together and you're deciding like, well, wait a minute, how is it that I put down my mountain ranges? And the trick is you're going to be using the plates that already exist. So you'll notice that I have my plates here. It's already lined up. What I'll do is I'll bring the opacity down so it's not too deep. You can see how much the landmass has differentiated from the actual plates, and that's okay. It's not going to change whether or not where you're going to put your mountain ranges. So then what you'll do next is you'll go into the catalog and you're going to go ahead and choose your mountain ranges. So I just type in mountain in the search bar. And you can kind of pick whatever mountain ranges you want to start with. Generally, I put all my mountain ranges down right away, like right in the beginning, right after I put all this together, because this is going to play a huge role in how your biomes interact, because mountains are so large that they actually impact the weather around them. So from here, we set scale. So this is really important because what the mountain is the largest stamp that's going to be on your map, right? No other really thing is going to be any bigger than the landmass itself. It's going to be bigger than your mountain. And so this sets your scale. So what you want to decide is like, how big do you want your mountain ranges to be? And then you can scale everything down to that. And the way that I decide the scale is really just how big the land masses are. Here it is at 100%. And you can kind of tell that the mountains are a little too big, right? They take up way too much room and they're not going to work well. So I'll go ahead then and bring the scale down a little bit more. So I just hold down the shift key, use my mouse scroll wheel, and now I can kind of set my scale. Now a safe place for scale is usually around 40 or 50, but of course if you really wanted to show tiny scale, you could go all the way down to like 10. so you can see how small the mountain ranges are. I don't want to go with that small of a scale because you wouldn't even be able to see the trees. You probably wouldn't even be able to see the rivers. So I'll make sure that the scale is large enough to where all my other stamps aren't so tiny, but they're also not too big to where they take up all the land. So, I got a question here by Rose Pace. Would you also use the plates to add islands more distant from continents? You totally can. That's up to you, right? You just need to set down the basic logic, which is just putting down those plates, and you can decide what you want to use the plates for, right? You could totally use them for islands. That's up to you. That's a great question, by the way, Rose Pace. Good question. I like that. So I'm going to set that scale. I think overall, like this size right here, which is 50, is a pretty decent size. Maybe it's a little too big. We could go down to maybe like 50 or 40. I think 40 is a good size. And so what you'll do is you'll follow the red lines. Now, what I won't do is I won't follow this one because that is the boundary of the continent. So instead, I'll use the lines that intersect through it, okay? Now, one of the rules is not to make a full wall of mountains, okay? That's rule 1. Do not create a full wall of mountains. Instead, what you do is you just need to create some of it, right? So you create one there, you create one here, maybe you'll create another one right here, and then maybe one that kind of goes right here, right? So you're kind of getting the idea. Same thing here. And what I generally don't do is I won't connect them all the way up. Sometimes I won't connect them up to the coastline. It depends. If you already have one, like right here, that's connected to the coastline, like that, then I generally won't have it connect all the way to the coastline. I'll usually just have it go here like this instead. And not perfectly centered in the middle, by the way. You want to have offset. So a little bit of distance between here and then down here, okay? Now, of course, you don't have to have all your mountain ranges be exactly on the plate tectonics. You might decide that I want some more mountain ranges. You totally can. That's up to you. So you could go in like this and say, well, I want to create maybe like another range up against this one so I can create a valley, right? Not too bad. I can go in and say, well, I want to have maybe a little bit more right over here going kind of this way towards here. You can. And the way that I decide where to put them is a sense of continuity with the other mountain ranges. So you notice that this mountain range right here goes like this, but then you also notice that I'm doing a similar pattern parallel to it, right? Same thing here. When I added this range right here, it followed the continuity of the bottom range right here, right? So it follows this sense of continuity. And that continuity is going to be helpful when creating a believability about the mountain range supposed to be there, right? It would be really odd if there was just a random range that went like this. It doesn't seem to correlate with the other ranges, but if I wanted to, I could do it like this instead, or like this instead, or like this, because it follows a sense of continuity, right? So kind of just some simple rules, some simple things that you can kind of do, because sometimes the plate tectonics might not be enough. And of course, a great way to resolve that is just to have more minor plates, because the more minor plates you have, that means the more plates that you can create, the larger continents you can create that have enough of those plates for you to put the mountains on. So, but just remember, you don't have to follow it perfectly. Remember, rules are meant to be broken. Just use them as a guide so that you're not second guessing every decision you make. When you decide to put down some mountains, you're like, well, wait a minute, does this work? The plate tectonics rule is one that's meant to be broken, but to make your life easier as well. Remember, fantasy, okay? So now that I've added in the ranges there, I might want to continue adding a couple more. There's a lot of dead space down here, so I might want to maybe consider making a range that goes right here. And I'm using the logic I'm using is following this plate right here, right? So you're seeing how exactly to kind of put those together. Some things that you might not want to do is you don't have to have things like a lonely mountain. If you're into the more realistic mountain ranges, then you probably won't have a lonely mountain, okay? If you're more into more realistic mountains, you're not going to have one mountain range going from one end of the continent to the other, okay? That's going to be a little over the top. So If you want more realistic, you can follow some guidelines right there. And it's okay. There's no right or wrong when it comes to deciding whether you want a more fantastical map or if you want a more realistic one. That is a matter of personal preference, and I would never shame anyone for either one of those decisions. That's up to you. Me, personally, I like a balance of both. I like one that's both realistic, but also incorporates fantasy elements, things that would never work with reality. And the reason why I follow that method is very simple. Fantasy and reality clash against each other. It creates a contrast, and therefore it makes your map pop out more. So having both fantastical and realistic elements makes for a much more contrasting map, and it makes it more interesting, right? So a mix of reality and a mix of fantasy. So let's keep adding mountain ranges to it. So I've got a couple here. I might want to consider adding maybe one more over here somewhere in the middle, and I want to use like the logic. So I'll go here like this, follow through, and then this is going to make sure that these mountain ranges kind of follow through here like this. So now that we have those ranges and there's plenty of room, one thing you want to factor in is that you don't want to have mountain ranges so where there's no room in between unless you're creating like a valley. This right in here is a valley. A valley is in between two mountain ranges. So whenever you want to make a valley, you create two mountain ranges side by side, parallel to each other in whichever direction you want them to be. And you always want to factor in that there's some negative space in between your regions, because this is where you're going to have your biomes, right? You might have a biome here and you might have one right here. It all depends, right? So mountain ranges, super important. I think this continent looks okay. Let's move over to the second largest one, and I'll go ahead and create the next range. I'll create a fairly large one right here. Let's create another one that kind of goes almost all the way there. Let's create another range that kind of goes right here, along here, and let's create another one. Let's maybe have it connect right here. And then I think I want to create like maybe another valley. So I'll go in right here and create another one that kind of goes right here. And so now we have a nice valley right there. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on. I think that's it for now. I don't want to have too much. This is a much smaller island than this large one right here. So I'm going to follow the logic that too many mountain ranges on a smaller island doesn't allow for enough biome diversity with so many. So it's always nice to leave a little bit of negative space. Again, negative space is wherever you don't have mountain ranges, right? So we'll go ahead and keep moving along to the next one. I think one here, we'll put a range here, but I don't want it to split the island like this. So what I'll do is I'll just make it a little bit smaller and then go across here. I'll make some continuity and put another one right here that goes like this, and the one that goes off to here. And then we'll follow one right here. I don't want it to split the island perfectly in half, so I'll kind of make it split over to here. And we'll add another one here. We'll split it up to here, and then we'll put another one right here up to there. Okay. Ooh, and one more island. This one right here. Put it here. Just remember those tricks. Don't have it go all span the entire continent. Make sure that they kind of break off a little bit. Now that you've created the main range, now you want to create branching ranges, or if you want to show that these ranges are crazy epic, then maybe you want to put a couple more side by side. So let's say that I wanted to say this is a very epic mountain range. Then I would place just a couple more in to kind of make it thicker, like this. So this can show that this is a much thicker, much larger mountain range. So start picking the mountain ranges that you want to be thicker. And remember the proximity rule. Just make sure you don't make them so big that there's not enough negative space. So I think that would make for a big one. And this one has space, so we'll make this one a fairly larger one. So this is simply making them thicker. You're making these ones bigger. There's not much room, so let's maybe put one here. I'll put this edge, make it nice and thick here. So we have that nice thick mountain range. And then we'll put another one here as well. Nice kind of a thicker section right there. Same thing here, thicker section, and then maybe a little bit right there and then right here. So we have those thicker sections. After you've added in the thicker section, then guess what? Now you can start creating the branching off ranges, the branches to branch off. And for what I'll do is I'll usually bring the mountain range down a scale or two, so I can go down to 30 or 20, and then I'll create the branching ranges. Now, the way that I make branching ranges is not complex. It's wherever there's a joint in the thing. So for instance, notice that this right here, you can see that there's little joints. There's a joint right there, and there's a joint right there. On those joints, that's where I'm going to create my branching off ranges. So I'll create a smaller branch that goes off here, and then I'll create maybe another branch that maybe connects these two ranges, and then maybe create some smaller ones on the edges to make it kind of transition from small to big. Same thing here, I'll make some smaller ones on this edges, smaller ones here, and then maybe we can have a couple branching off this way, like this. So I'll have a couple branching off that way, and then we can also take a couple in the back, branching off here and there. So now we have a more unique shape. Remember, you create the main range, and then you create the smaller branching ranges. So right here, you'll notice there's a branch right here. Let's go and connect that. Another branch right here. Let's do that one, branch here. And we're just going to follow that logic of following the branches. So one here, one right here, one here, and of course on my edges so that I have a nice transition between smaller and larger. Put another branch there. Let's put a branch here, one branching off there, one right here like this. Some smaller ones here, and let's have a couple branching off into here, here, and here. There we go. And you're always keeping in mind that you don't want them to be so big there's no more negative space. But this larger continent, I think there's plenty of room in between, and because there's all that room, you can have a nice complex biomes in there. So I think overall it looks good. Let's go ahead and keep adding those smaller branches. And you can make the branches much, much larger. You don't have to have little tiny branches like this. Have them vary. Some really long branches and some really small branches that might just be one mountain long, like a little small branch right there, just one. It's up to you. You have to decide what looks best for you. So I'll go ahead and put these together. We'll add another range just right here, and then maybe some smaller ones there. Same thing here. Okay, same thing here. Here, let's create some ranges that some smaller ranges that branch off. There, same thing here. Some branching. There we go. So that looks good. We're almost there. We'll add just a couple more. Let's have these ones kind of branching out towards the ocean. I think that will add for some nice, interesting shapes that we can add in there. That'd be cool. And then we can create a nice mountain pass right there so people can kind of walk through. Let's go ahead and continue on this shape. We're almost done with this. There we go. Have that branch off there. Let me take a step back. Let's take a look at it and see where we're kind of at. I think overall, the shapes look fine. Let's go ahead and save it. We're at 587 changes. So not complex, right? It's all about following a method, right? You notice that I made the main branch and then the small branches that come off from the joints or hips, if you want to call them, whatever it is you want to call them. And so that kind of puts all of that together. So it's just so much easier when you follow a process, because when you're trying to eyeball everything and try to do things without rules and guidelines to kind of give you a steady, heading, that's all very helpful, right? So just kind of follow some very basic rules to kind of put things together. Okay, so now that we've kind of done that, where are we at for time? You know what? We've got 12 minutes left. We have a little bit more time. Let's go ahead and turn off the plates. I don't think I need them anymore, but I want to be able to show you where they are. We can leave them on for now, or just keep them. We won't delete them, so I'll just drop the opacity down. And then this way I can look at the map without accidentally having to move the stuff. Now, I will say that if you're not happy with the placement, you can move landmasses. So if you go over to the mask tool, you go all the way down to the bottom, it's going to be called move area. So I can select something and then I can actually move it. So you can actually do that. So kind of helpful to do that, just so you know. You can change and move things as need be if you want to. I generally just make sure that I have it in place. One of the reasons why you might want to move it is maybe it's too close to another continent, or you want to move it somewhere else, you can. That's up to you, so very helpful to keep that in mind. You can also just use the resize. Let's say that this landmass on the left is too close to the edge and this one is not close enough. you can always use the resize feature to do that. You just turn on grid, snap to grid, and then you can kind of use that as a guide to kind of make the size bigger. So that way there's more balance between the two. So it's up to you. You can totally do that. But I think overall, I'm pretty happy with the way that it kind of turned out here. So what we'll do is I'm going to show how to put on some hills real quick, because the way that elevation works is the highest point is going to be the apex of the mountain, and then the further that you go away from the mountain, the more and more the landscape is going to start to level out, the closer that it gets to the coastline. Now, this is not set in stone, but it's a good rule to follow by. So what's always nice to put at the base of your mountains is hills. And you can also use smaller mountains, like these small mountains right here. These also work, and it's up to you. The way that I decide which hill or mountain to use depends on what region it is, right? Like if you want to show that these mountains are craggy and they're sharp and kind of edgy, then you would use maybe these smaller mountain ranges to act as maybe your foothills. Otherwise, you would just use hills. Right? And you can see there's a bunch of choices that you can kind of choose from. And then, of course, when it comes to scale, it's not complex. You're not going to have a hill that's going to be bigger than a mountain, right? So you'll scale that down to what size that you feel is best. And of course, make sure that it's on the same layer that your mountains are on. And then what you'll do is you'll just go ahead and very easily just kind of place them right at the base of the mountains. And the way that I do it is this. I'll start with creating just right along the edge there, and don't make a perfect line like this. What you'll do is you'll break it up. So you'll have some right here and then some right here, right? And then I'll create a ridge of hills kind of going away. And then I'll bring the size down. And then the further that I get away from the mountain range, the smaller the hills are going to be, right? And so that's really the logic that you follow. Big, small. So let's go ahead and create a couple more. Let's do these medium-sized ones. Let's put them at the base of this hill, these mountains. And the trick is you don't have to do hills at the base of every single mountain. In fact, it's kind of nice to not do every single one. Just do a couple of them. And that way you don't have to put them on every single one, and it doesn't really work. Some biomes might have more hills or no hills, depending, right? So don't worry about putting hills on every single one of them. Just start with a couple. And then I'll kind of create those little lines here, just like I did with my mountain ranges, right? I'm kind of creating these little lines of foothills, and the further you get away, the more scattered, the smaller they get. So I can maybe just create just a smattering of a couple here like this. And then I can go back to my medium-sized ones, and then kind of follow that process again. So I want to have some hills at the base of this one. Let's create a little row, maybe have some here as well. And then I can go back over here, select my smaller one, and then do it again. There we go. Okay. So you're kind of getting the general idea on how to kind of put down your mountains and your ranges, and then where to put your foothills from there. So we're at 199 changes. We're going to save. And I think we're at just a couple more minutes before the hour is up. So we're going to call it good here. But I think we covered everything that we wanted to in the first part. We covered with the myth, the lore, the creation myth. Again, it's not necessary. I just put it in the creation myth because it's nice to have at least a little lore that you can kind of work with. It's kind of just a loose guideline. And then after you've made the lore, then you'll go on to that next step, the plate tectonics. Remember, you'll start with a plate on each side. Let me go back over that so you can see that real quick. Just a brief overview for those of you who might have missed the first half. So when we did the plates here, we created the frame, the two plates. So the one on the left and the right are one whole plate. The one at the top and the bottom are one whole plate, two plates. And then we made a mix of major and minor plates. And remember, if you want more unique landmass shapes and more unique mountain ranges, then of course you're probably going to want to add more minor plates so that way you can have more unique designs. That, or if you're not too picky, just go outside of the design of the plates. You don't have to follow it through all the ways. You can see here with the additive and subtractive method, I removed pieces so it didn't follow the fault lines perfectly. That's up to you. Totally okay. Then after you've done all that, then you'll go over with a black pen or a black line. You'll go over the continent shapes. And again, if you don't feel there's enough plates connecting to each other, make more minor plates within the larger one so that you can get the landmass different shapes and you can get the mountain ranges differently. And then from there, you'll go ahead and fill in with the mask tool. You'll create the outline first and then fill with a bucket. And then after that, you'll do your real quick brush up along the edges of your landmasses, just adding in some horns, some inlets, and some different shapes along the coastline. Again, those are not set in stone. It's just a brief outline for you to work with. And then, of course, you'll add in your mountain ranges. Remember, the method is a whole method for the mountain ranges. You'll start by putting them on the red lines or the plates within the continent. And then, of course, you'll start with the main range. Then you'll create branching off little ranges, and then you can kind of add foothills where you want to add them. So the process is not complex, but it's always good to have a process because it's very easy to get discouraged, right? Without having a direction to go in, it's easy to lose interest. And believe me, it happens. I lose interest. In fact, within the first 30 minutes, I always hate my map. In fact, I didn't like this one. I hated it at first, but by continually to add stuff, follow through with the process, it slowly started to grow on me a little bit. And that's going to happen to you too. Don't get discouraged. Just keep going. And eventually, once you've added enough, you'll start to begin to feel like, okay, it's coming together a little bit. It's not perfect, but it's better than what I had originally hoped for, or better than what I had originally envisioned. So it's all about just pushing through and just keep going, and you won't lose interest. All right. Well, that's it for this stream. Now, I do have next Monday and Tuesday off of next week, so I won't be around in the Discord server. If you guys are looking for me, I won't be here. I'm just going to be on a little vacation. I need a little recharge from working on 2.0, which we're very excited to release. Hopefully that will be much sooner than later, so I'm excited about that. Thank you all for being here with me, and I will see you all next week on Wednesday, and that's going to be creating hex maps. And I'm going to show you how to make a customizable template hex map where you can create your own hex tiles and then place them together to create your world maps. Because I know some people like hex crawls. They're kind of old school, but I know I have some old school people in here. So we'll show you how to make a customizable hex tiles to make your hex crawl map. So I'm excited about that. All right. Thank you everyone for watching. I appreciate you all very much. Have a great weekend, and I will see you all next week on Wednesday. Please stay safe and healthy, and of course, merry map making. See you, everybody. Take care, okay?